Joe Rogan texted me.
Motherfucker. Joe, I loved, by the way, I'm a Joe Rogan fan. He ain't a fan of mine, but I'm a Joe Rogan fan. No bull.
Right on.
And I've lived with it for I feel like it's a decade. Back in the day, before Joe was Joe Rogan. He hasn't, for years and years, he's been attacking me, and it's one way, and he won't have me on. He's consistently not having me on. By the way, I'm moving on. I have no interest.
You're done with him?
Joe Rogan's the Facebook of podcasting.
So I want to tell you about this Gavin Newsom, Joe Rogan feud today, and I think it really does stand as a prime example of just how fragile Gavin Newsom's ego and public image actually are. Because I think a lot of people have this perception of Gavin that he's some type of strong, invincible political dynamo, right? He's articulate, he's sharp, it's going to be really hard to beat him. And don't get me wrong, he does have his strengths. He's a fantastic BS artist. He certainly has the sort of look and the demeanor to be in politics, but at the same time, you're talking about a guy who takes softball interviews basically every single week, and whenever he's been confronted with a remotely hard or difficult question, the guy completely melts down on camera because he's basically a paper tiger in the sense that he's literally fake, right? He has the shell on the outside. You peel that back, you get stuff like this right here, where we covered this, but on a recent podcast with left-wingers, they asked him a very simple question in terms of what does he think about AIPAC? Now, keep in mind, the Israel thing is something that is obviously very contentious right now among the left-wing base. It's a question that, frankly, he should have expected, and yet he proceeded to completely short-circuit on camera, as you may have seen in this clip right here. And again, prime example of what we're talking about. Gavin Newsom, not really as talented as people seem to think.
Interesting, you're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
I will not vote for a candidate that takes $1 from AIPAC.
It's interesting. I mean, it's interesting. I haven't thought about AIPAC. And it's interesting. You're like the first to bring up AIPAC in years, which is interesting.
Why
did I say that? Not relevant to my day-to-day life.
Okay.
Which is just interesting.
Listen.
It's interesting you say that. JPAC perhaps more, but AIPAC less and less.
Okay. Fair enough.
Which is just interesting.
What's interesting about it?
That it's just interesting as you bring up AIPAC that it hasn't been part of, I'm just reflecting quite openly and honestly, hasn't been part of the day-to-day.
Yeah. The only reason why I ask is because with that, what I'm talking about is lobbying in and of itself.
I mean, my gosh, right? Talk about the guiltiest answer of all time. You're trying to fend off what's going to obviously turn into a criticism from the left-wing base, and your response, your answer to that is to give the single worst, the most guilty sounding answer you possibly could. Yeah, Gavin, I don't think that's a fantastic strategy, but after all, this is the only thing he's capable of because, as I will repeat, he's not actually that strong of a figure. He is, like many Democratic candidates who have been anointed by the media in the past, basically being given this like free media tour where they just talk about how amazing he is. In any interview, he's just like, Donald Trump is terrible. The ICE raids are cruel and inhumane. California has the best GDP in the world, blah, 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 blah. But again, a complete meltdown the moment he's confronted on something remotely difficult. Well, following up on that, I do think that this recent feud with Joe Rogan summarizes how you have the image of Gavin Newsom, the amazing political dynamo, right? 2028 presidential candidate. He's the best fighter in the Democrat Party. And then the reality where he's like feuding with some podcaster and looking like a complete unserious fool in the process. So we'll tell you about apparently what is going on in today's video, as Gavin Newsom is apparently mad that Joe Rogan said he wouldn't have him on the show because Joe Rogan just doesn't like Newsom, and Newsom's like, no, my ego's been insulted, let me melt down. But again, he's such a serious political figure. So we'll tell you about it, guys. First though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And with that said, before we show you the Newsom meltdown, I feel like the context is necessary in terms of what Joe Rogan has recently said about Gavin Newsom, which, by the way, is just completely true. And again, Newsom very upset that his feelings were hurt. How dare you speak badly about me? That's interesting. All right, take a listen.
They don't have any faith in Gavin Newsom.
Oh, Which is kind of funny because he wants to be president so bad.
That's sure what it looks
but
like.
You can't ruin a city and then go on to ruin a state and say, guys, that was just practice.
I know.
Once I get it as a president, I'm going to fix it. Fix it all.
I mean, it's so crazy, but he's such a great politician. I mean,
No,
he's so smooth.
He's
You
not,
don't think
though.
so?
No, I think he's terrible.
How's
It's
he
just-
remained in
'cause
power
he
for
has
so long?
Low competition. There's no one who's
there's
good
that.
is competing against him.
I
There's
guess
no
I
sincerity.
should say he's not a good. I should say he's smooth. He comes.
I
across
mean,
pretty
he's a
smooth.
good bull artist.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
But it's like what the things that he says when he gets confronted with things. We're the highest this and the highest that. Like everybody's leaving.
Yeah.
You have the highest unemployment.
Yeah.
You have the highest homelessness.
Look what they did with Hollywood.
Money's missing. You killed Hollywood. Like
know.
Hollywood doesn't exist anymore. It's literally gone.
That was such
you
an easy one.
mandated vaccines for kids that didn't need them. You guys, he did horrible shit.
You been on Newsom's podcast yet?
I heard it's really good. He would probably have me on. I'm not interested.
I'd like to be asked.
It's not like I'm opposed to talking to Democratic politicians. I'll talk to anybody. But that guy, I'm not interested. Yeah.
Yeah, so as you heard, pretty baseline normal criticisms of Gavin Newsom that anyone who's ever lived or been familiar with California is well familiar with. And frankly, I gotta say, I give props to Rogan for not platforming Newsom. Because it's one thing if you're going to bring him on and then genuinely ask him hard questions or debate him or really know the facts against this guy. Because he does have like a good surface layer of BS. You got to delve deeper. You got to know how to come back against that. But what you frankly seen from a lot of Gavin's quote unquote new media tour, right? All of these podcasts that he's going on and talking about, GDP, we're the best, we're the Golden State, is that no one ever pushes back. Right? You have a lot of, frankly, failing podcasts who are struggling to get views. Gavin Newsom contacts, like, hey, I'd like to come on. They're like, okay, sure. Let's just let you have a platform for an hour so you can spew your BS and we'll make money off of it, right? But Rogan is obviously saying he's not going to do that. I think deep down, maybe Newsom is nervous because there is this belief, especially within establishment Democrat circles, that the refusal by Kamala Harris to go on that show back in 2024 was a contributing factor to her losing the election. And I would sit here, frankly, and say, on one hand, while that might have played a factor, I think this whole Joe Rogan thing is vastly overblown, right? What it actually summarizes is a greater failure of the way in which she did not approach the new media space, independent media. But it's not just a matter of, Democrat politicians go on a podcast and therefore they're going to get votes, right? If Pete Buttigieg goes out there sounding like the sleepiest, most boring guy of all time and says, look, Donald Trump is BS and let's talk about the big BS bill, that people care. No, the whole point of independent media, the whole point of new media is this belief that it's more authentic, it feels more real. Donald Trump and kind of Trump world has a natural inroads to that sector because there's a feeling around Trump that he's sort of this authentic person, right? So that's to say, you can put your, fake BS on the internet, it's going to look like fake BS. And that's what they don't understand. But nonetheless, last night, Gavin Newsom went on the new Elex Michelsen show that's being hosted on CNN. And Alex asked him, by the way, this whole interview, like usual, is just a softball. They just asked Gavin Newsom, hey, so how are you feeling these days? I mean, tell me about what you think about Prop 50. Let me not ask any single follow-up questions and all that garbage. But take a listen to the utter meltdown that Newsom has the moment he gets asked about Joe Rogan. I mean, frankly, you guys want an example, okay? You want to trigger Gavin Newsom, you want him to completely lose his mind. This should be the strategy. Just be like Joe Rogan. Question number one, what do you think about Joe Rogan? Right? JD Vance should do that in the debate in 2028. Just be like, hey, Joe Rogan, Gavin Newsom's going to start melting. But anyways, all right, let's take a listen to Gavin's response to Mr. Rogan here.
He hasn't, for years and years, he's been attacking me, and it's one way, and he won't have me on. He's consistently not having me on. By the way, I'm moving on. I have no interest. You're done with him? Joe Rogan's the Facebook of podcasting. He was sitting across one of the brightest minds in podcasting right now. The guy was in the mic. Mm-hmm. And there are a lot of people at the mic doing extraordinary things in podcasting.
Joe Rogan's got a pretty big audience still.
You know what? But with all due respect, if he has a big audience but he doesn't have big enough confidence, I didn't go there, to have me on.
Well, you've called him a chicken.
He's been attacking here's the thing. These guys, they all have something in common. It's one way. They attack, they belittle, they demean, they take things out of context. But this is a serious thing.
Yeah.
And so often we just sit back and go, oh God, I really would love to go on. Oh, if Kamala Harris just went on Joe Rogan, she would have won. It's not, it's so much deeper than that. And the unwillingness for a guy like that to even have the common courtesy to attack someone and not have the decency, say, you know what, why don't you have a chance to come on? Let's have a civil dialogue. I've watched you on podcasts with like Sean Ryan, who's a close buddy of his. He had the courage on me have 4 hours.
Right.
Sean Hannity, folks like that. And so if I can go on Sean Ryan and Sean Hannity, what are you worried about? What are you, Joe, you're going to cook me or I'm going to cook myself.
So my favorite part of that is how Gavin Newsom starts off by trying to say that Joe Rogan is irrelevant. He's the Facebook of podcasts, whatever that means. He doesn't matter. I'm done with him. I don't care. And then proceeds to spend the entire next minute absolutely fuming that he's not being allowed to go on the show, right? He's mean to me, he's belittling me, and he won't have me on. It's a serious thing, is literally what he said, right? It's like, Gavin, if he doesn't matter, if he's irrelevant, why are you so desperate to go on his show? And then you're like, no, I'm not desperate, I don't care, but also I want to go on the show. It's like, it's total seething. It's like watching a child try to cope with the fact that, I don't know, their dad beat them in, backyard baseball, and they're like, I wasn't trying anyway, but also you didn't play fair, but I wasn't trying, but I didn't mean to, but I meant to lose. It's total garbage. It's like, okay, buddy. Now, in a second, I do want to explain to you why I think it's actually a very positive thing, at least thus far, that Rogan has not platformed Gavin Newsom, unlike some of the other podcasters I've alluded to thus far. But I do want to show you what I guess you could call a form of a Joe Rogan response to all of that in terms of, the civil dialogue in Gavin Newsom's own words that he is actually scared to confront, hence why you notice nobody ever really asked him about these simple questions.
Yeah, when is he coming on? He's talking some shit on Twitter.
I know, it's like, you think that's going to work? Like, that's so stupid. Like, this is such a bad look.
Yeah.
It's such a bad choice.
There's a little desperation in it.
But it's just stupid. It's like, this is a bad strategy. Like, I probably would have had him on.
Yeah.
But now I'm like, nah, what are you doing?
There is a fun version where you just do it and cook them,
He'll cook himself.
I mean, that
He'll
seems
cook himself.
to be
All you have to
happening.
do is just ask him questions.
Yeah, it's like, why are people leaving?
Well, why do you say this thing all the time where you rattle off all the good things about California? When anybody says something bad about California, it's like, #1 in Fortune 500 companies, #1 in higher education, #1. It was all that shit before you were there. It was all that shit forever. It's because the weather's perfect, man. It has nothing to do with you.
Yeah, well, let me tell you why I'm actually really glad that Rogan will not have Newsom on the podcast. Is because while there's some truth in what Rogan said, I also largely disagree. I don't think Newsom cooks himself. Kamala Harris cooks herself, right? You ask her a basic question, she just has a complete meltdown. Newsom has a good line of BS. The problem with all of these podcasts, quote unquote, that he's done so far is that not a single host is actually equipped or willing to push back and ask him a single difficult question. As a matter of fact, as you saw with the AIPAC thing, the moment you put him on a topic he doesn't want to talk about, the guy simply cannot handle it. He's extremely fragile. However, again, why I'm glad that Rogan's not having him on the show is because fundamentally the Joe Rogan experience is not meant to be a combative interview, right? It's kind of a sit down for 3 hours and talk about random stuff type of conversation. And Newsom absolutely could get his way through that, right? Because he has the lines, but that's again why you got to press him. And Rogan, considering, I'm not even trying to attack or hate on the guy, but considering, yes, the style of his show is not really combative, I'm very glad he's just saying, I'm not going to give Newsom a platform for 3 hours to talk about such BS, because you can already see, right, on that same show, Newsom gave a response to the Rogan attack line, and again, you can see the host here not even try to push back on it, so take a listen.
California has a progressive tax structure. That's the real reason a lot of these folks left.
Right.
Come on, let's have this conversation.
Yeah.
They don't like progressive tax. They like regressive tax policy. Where's Rogan live? In one of the most regressive tax states in America that tax poor people more. Poor people are taxed more than the richest 1% in Texas, places like Florida. That's what they celebrate. They promote. They are high tax states, but not for them. Mm-hmm. You can't claim California is a high tax state. High tax for who? The 1%. Progressive tax state. Regressive taxes persist in these red states, particularly these large red states. And I think that is a state of mind that also is something that I believe in and needs to be promoted in relationship to your question around wealth and income inequality. And I'll tell you, it was interesting. I had on my podcast, Steve Bannon, who was making a case. He didn't say the word California, but he sure as hell sounded like someone making the case for California's tax policy. Again, the same policy that Elon Musk and Rogan and all these guys decry and criticize.
Yeah, see exactly what I'm saying? That's very easily debunkable, by the way. That's simply not true. If a state like Texas has no state income tax, which it doesn't, or Florida, then they have no state income tax. There's no regressive nature to that because nobody's paying any state income tax. You could say it's a flat tax in a sense, but it's zero, but okay. You know, if you want to talk about something like sales tax, those are still higher in most of California than, at least I live in Florida, so I'll compare that right to Florida. And the only real kind of strong tax they have in the no income tax red states is, guess what? Property tax. And in a state like Texas especially, property tax is notably pretty high, actually higher than California's. But Gavin, how in the world is that a regressive tax structure? Because the poorest people, first of all, don't own property. And then the sort of middle class who does own property, guess what? Property tax is assessed based on the value of your home, okay? You pay a certain percentage of that. So the people who are richer and have bigger houses and more expensive real estate are, guess what? Paying more property tax. Meanwhile, in California, the simple reality is you just have a state income tax and it's generally high anyway. And guess what? You know, being a poor person in Texas versus California, if you're working, if you have a job, I guess that's who Gavin Newsom's trying to appeal to, right? The people who don't have income, the people who just live off of welfare, Section 8 and EBT the whole time, which is frankly a lot of the state. But no, if you're a working person, especially a poor person who doesn't have to deal with something like property tax because you're just paying rent, yes, you're going to be taxed much higher in California than in Texas. Because guess what? In Texas, you don't even have an income tax. So again, completely bogus and made up. But this is, yes, the common theme that you see. Even the time talking about Sean Ryan, right? That guy from the Tennessee Holler. I don't really know him that well. My understanding is he's supposed to be a conservative or something. But frankly, I thought that guy did a complete disgrace when he interviewed Gavin Newsom because it was the same garbage, right? He comes on, Gavin Newsom gives you the BS, and you have no strategy to debunk it. You frankly don't even ask him any hard questions. And then Newsom walks away having done fantastic in that interview because you didn't really press him on anything. And then Newsom can say, look, I talked to a conservative and I destroyed them. I own them. It's like just total garbage. So, you know, that's why I say I would be worried that Rogan would do that. And I'm glad Rogan's not doing it. But I will say this right now to Gavin Newsom. You know, if you're so mad that independent media won't platform you, if you want someone who is kind of right, I don't even know if you call Joe Rogan right wing, but if that's who you're trying to appeal to, right? If you want to go on a right wing show, Gavin, let me say this right now, Gavin, you're welcome on our show anytime. Okay, I grew up in your state for 18 years. As a matter of fact, you and your governorship is maybe a major contributing factor to my involvement in politics. So let me just say, right, you want to have a civil dialogue? Come on, Gavin, let's have a civil dialogue, okay? You know why he'd never come on the show? Because we'd actually ask him the hard questions, and we would not sit there and just allow him to get away with all this garbage about GDP as if it wasn't the best economy before. And by every metric, once you took office, everything went downhill, okay? So I'd ask Gavin Newsom, number one, you know, there's other questions to ask about, hey, why are so many people leaving your state? Hey, you talk about homelessness and you campaign as the mayor of San Francisco. Years ago, you were going to end homelessness. Under your governorship, homelessness has exploded by at least 30,000 from what we know of. I'd further ask, right? What's the deal with all the corrupt NGOs that you gave billions of dollars to fix homelessness, and then the homeless problem got worse? But you know the first question I'd ask, Gavin, okay? I'd say number one, Gavin, where's the high-speed rail? You claim you're such a competent governor. Please explain the high-speed rail situation. Number two, I'd ask him, why did you bail out PG&E? After they coincidentally, first of all, burned down an entire town in California thanks to their negligence. They donated to your campaign. They got convicted of felonies, and yet you bailed them out. Well, I've seen you try to answer that question before, Gavin, and it didn't go all that well. Maybe that's why you would never actually take a strong or hard interview. You claim you're doing that. You claim, oh, I went on Sean Ryan's show. You know, I talked to a conservative. No, you haven't. Because if you talk to someone who actually knew your skeletons in your closet, it goes something like this right here, as we've seen before, by the way, happen the few times someone asked this guy a legitimate question.
Why is it okay for you to take money from a felon?
And you know that the way you frame that is going to lead me to ask you to flesh.
Your office is aware of my question. I've tried to schedule time to talk with you about
this. I don't know what you're...
PG&E was convicted of 6 federal felonies in 2016. After that, you took more than $200,000 to help get elected. How should people trust you to be running the show to come up with the solution.
I wish you luck with whatever you're working on, but that's a strange question.
Well, I know it's a strange question. It's a strange time, but there's a convicted federal felon making campaign donations in this state to our duly elected leaders, including the speaker, who took almost $9,000.
Yeah, look, we're trying to focus on the
It's a serious question. You don't think people want an answer to that?
Right. These are the types of questions that the supposed independent media figures who are basically just acting in the pocket of Gavin Newsom, including Sean Ryan for some odd reason, ought to be asking. Like, for instance, Gavin, if you are such a fantastic economic manager who constantly wants to brag about the GDP, how is it that under your governorship, you went from a $100 billion surplus in 2022 to a $68 billion state budget deficit by 2024 that very hilariously is now finally forcing you to cut Medi-Cal for illegal aliens? Well, again, no one freaking asked him about this. I don't know why. These are all easily things you can find out. You just look at the stats under his governorship, right? It's pretty straightforward. How did homelessness increase by 20% when you spent $24 billion to supposedly reduce or fix the problem? Yeah, it's almost like you're a corrupt politician who funneled it to a bunch of NGOs that are favorable to the Democrat Party. One of the most corrupt people of all time. How did violent crime go up by 10%? Now you're claiming that, I'm so amazing at my job because we reduced crime from its 2023 peak. Yeah, ridiculous. By the way, how can you claim to be so pro-democracy when the people of your state voted overwhelmingly for Proposition 36? That is the anti-crime amendment that would finally result in real law and order in the state. And yet you and your state legislature explicitly refuse to fund it. And then you're going to come and say, oh, we're tough on crime or something, or pro-democracy. The people, how can that even be the case? You put on a ballot proposition, the people vote for it, and you just say, you know what? No, screw the people. We're not even going to enact that. You got 20% school learning loss. I'm just reading off some of these stats because you decided to lock down the schools for a much longer time than basically any other state. How is it that on the front of water, right? The thing Trump is always talking about, 50% of your conservation targets in terms of water were missed. Okay. How is it that your green energy push, which you claim is so amazing, has resulted in some of the most expensive electricity bills in the country? People remember a lot of the infamous blackouts back in 2020, and they're still happening today. You have more acres burned than any governor under the wildfires. This stuff goes on, and that's not even starting with the corruption rabbit hole, okay? I'm sure you won't, though, because you just want a platform to talk about, Donald Trump and this and that, and, let's talk about our life story, which he's apparently also, by the way, trying to reinvent lately, this claim that he's like a poor kid who really grew up as a normal person like everyone else. Anyone seen this?
But also, it was also about paying the bills, man. And it was just like hustling. And so I was out there kind of raising myself, turning on the TV, started, just getting obsessed, sitting there with the Wonder Bread and 5 stacks of,
it's like the White Stack 5 story.
Come on. Kraft macaroni and cheese.
Bro. Are you talking about me?
Young YG.
YG, man.
Every day in the backyard, just bouncing the basketball, throwing the ball against the wall until the ball is just like fraying, man. And your arms
yourself.
Off. That's it. Whole thing. So just, and then, then this student that was shitty student is in the back with his head down, all of a sudden started throwing the baseball a little faster than everyone else. And started, make a few free throws because I was sitting there practicing 500 of them every damn night. And in high school, I look up in the stands, my dad's back up there.
Okay, dope.
And it's like, man. And then he's bringing his friends, and you're captain of the team, and you're like, gee, and it just saved me, and it got me into college.
Man, I'm Gavin Newsom. Gee, what is this? What is this? But yeah, again, guys. You see the type of interviews that Gavin Newsom is taking. How do you think he's going to respond to our request, if at all? Probably, yeah, we know. Again, he doesn't want to take any full interview. But all right, with that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this little drama in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new. And until next time, God bless and peace.